spring day here in northern Michigan, and it's a perfect day to wash up some of this yarn that I've been spinning all winter long. So the first yarn that I'm going to wash is a 50% alpaca, 50% wool blend. And I decided to do this blend because the alpaca isn't very elastic, so it's always best to blend it with wool. I decided to do 50-50 for this project, but I think next time I may try 75% alpaca and 25% wool to see how that goes. So I had an alpaca fleece and a wool fleece, and so then I put that through my mill, made bats, and then spun that up. So the fleeces, they didn't really have a lot of vegetable matter, but they were, not particularly clean. So I need to clean this as well. So the technique I'm going to show you today is a technique that I learned from my Aunt Dee Dee. And I'm very fortunate Aunt Dee Dee moved to the same town I live in, and Aunt Dee Dee is a very skilled spinner and a very skilled weaver, so she is absolutely my go-to person. And pre-COVID, Dee Dee attended many spinning and weaving workshops just all across the country. So this is the technique that she learned from one of those workshops that she attended, and I'm going to share that with you today. So in terms of what you need, I have rubber gloves because I'm going to be working in hot water. And also I have this product called Power Scour, which is a wash specifically for wool. I'm in my kitchen and I have a 2-basin sink, and in one basin I'm going to put in hot water, and then the next basin I'm going to be putting in cold water. Okay, so we're going to draw the hot water bath first, so let's get to that. Now we're going to be preparing the hot water bath. I'm going to turn my tap on to the hottest setting and then put a little dab of Power Scour into the bath. Shake that up a little bit. Notice that my yarn is not in the sink. I do not want the water running on top of my yarn because that might over agitate it and felt it up a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and fill my sink up. All right, that should do it. Now I'm going to take my skeins of yarn, submerge them in the water. Just want to make sure all the yarn is covered. It's one skein. Oops. Two. All right, I want the yarn to be covered, but I'm not going to be moving the yarn around too much because I don't want it to felt. So I'm just going to let it sit in the soapy water for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. While that is soaking, let's just talk about the wool itself. So if you were to look at wool underneath a microscope, you'd be looking at the outer layer of the strand of wool called a cuticle. And if you were to look at the cuticle, you'll see scales. They kind of look like fish scales or maybe shingles on the house. So what happens when you wet the wool, specifically in hot water, is you open up those scales, and then when we put the wool and the alpaca blend into the cold water mix, we're going to be quickly closing up those scales so that when the two strands that are right next to each other, their scales open, they close, they're going to intertwine with each other, and that's going to what we call set the twist. The soap, when we put the soap in, that's going to break down the oil and also help get the dirt out of the fleece. Because this came from a raw fleece, I'm going to repeat the process of the hot water, cold water, hot water, cold water bath, maybe a couple times until I see that the water is clear. So I need to give this a couple more minutes in the hot water bath, and then I'll show you what I do when we're moving it to the cold water bath. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes and my yarn has been soaking. I ran a cold bath with the coldest tap water I could get from my sink, and then also put in ice cubes in here. So I'm going to be taking the yarn from the hot bath, gently squeezing it, and putting it into the cold bath. So if you remember, those barbs have been opened by the water and the heat, and now we're shocking them and closing them so they interlock with each other. Again, you want the yarn submerged. Now let's take a look at our soapy water here. Ooh, it's pretty gray. So that yarn was quite dirty. So I'm going to drain this. I'm going to run another hot bath, this time without the soap. I'm going to do a few rinses. In the cold bath, I didn't really need to let this sit very long. I'm going to take it, squeeze it out a little bit. I ran another hot bath. I'm putting this in. I'm really surprised at how gray this water is. It's a lot dirtier than what I had thought. It doesn't clear up. I may need to do another tub of soap. I'm just gonna see how this goes. All right, so I'm back in the hot bath again. I'm gonna let this soak for 15 minutes and drain my cold bath. Okay, so we're outside because we're going to thwack our yarn and then we're going to hang it out to dry. So thwacking settles the yarn, and so what we're going to do is we're going to hold our yarn like this and we're going to hit it against a hard surface. Then I'm going to rotate it, continue hitting. Okay, I think this one is done. I'm going to hang it on my rack here. And then continue with the other 2 skeins and then go back and do the whole process again with the remaining 3 skeins of yarn. Okay, so I'm back in the house. All my skeins have dried and I thought I'd give you a peek to see how they turned out. I did save one skein. I didn't wash it or thwack it, so I can show you a comparison of one that has been washed against one that has not. So this skein right here has not been washed. And if you can see all these little twisties and turnies in this skein of yarn. We'll compare that to the skein that was washed and then thwacked, where it's nice and straight. Okay, I'm going to take a step back now and I want you to see how they hang. All right, this is the one that has been washed, and what I'm pleased about is it hangs nice and straight. That means that I didn't over twist the yarn when I spun it. If I over twisted the yarn after washing it, it may have a little twist like this, but it doesn't do that, so I'm very pleased with how this turned out. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and wash this skein. I'll now have yarn that I'm ready to weave with.